Ladies and gentlemen,
We finally fucking did it.
welcome to a very, very special episode of Enter the Abyss. We have a lot to celebrate.
The first time we've been back together on a show since we broke 500 subs.
Yeah. And we didn't just break 500 subs, we broke it by a lot. I don't know what happened. I really don't. And it's honestly, thank you to everyone who subscribed, because we got how many subs in 1 week?
116.
116. So we needed 12, and everyone pulled together and brought in 116, which I'm not a mathematician, but it's a little bit more than we needed.
I'm not a mathematist. However, could just be one dude with 116 accounts.
If that's the case, thank you, dude.
That's
for your
dedication.
116. But we did it. We have hit 500 subs, which, if you've been following us at all, you know that means that we are now going to take our trip to Nevada to stay at the infamous Clown Motel.
Very excited.
So we're in the process of planning it, getting it all scheduled and set up. So in the very near future, we'll be trekking out there, recording it, and be on the lookout for the video. We'll keep you all posted along the way. And to celebrate, we are drinking a beer that I picked out. I went straight for the name on this one. It's Mama's Milk. It's an Imperial Milk Stout from Vernal Brewing Co.
Mama's milk tastes good, man. It's good.
Ooh, that is good.
I'm a bigger fan of this peanut butter whiskey though that we have.
Yeah. You could probably hear the ice clinking in Cleet's glass. We're also celebrating with a little bit of Screwball peanut butter whiskey.
God, it's so good.
Because it's a good time to celebrate. But truly, from the bottom of the abyss, thank you to everybody who made that happen. We couldn't be more happy and proud of where our show is.
I feel like the correct way to say it is from the depths of the abyss.
From the depths.
Or maybe the audience could let us know
Deepest.
which one's better, the bottom of the abyss or the depths.
Deepest, darkest, scariest, moist
Moist.
place.
I was going to say that.
Well,
Oh,
our
God,
minds are in the
gross.
same spot. From the bottom of the moist abyss, thanks everybody for making
Yeah.
it happen. And, as we always say at the end of the show, thank you consistently for entering the abyss.
You
But
wanna-
cheers, Cleet, to
Cheers.
600 subs, man.
If you want to support the show, click the link in the description. You can donate $3, $5, or $10 a month.
And it really helps us out, and it definitely helped us get the camera and everything. And on that note, on our way to 1,000 subs, we're looking for a new place to go. So if you have a suggestion, send it to us. entertheabysspod@gmail.com. Once we break 1,000, we'll be trekking off to somewhere else that's really spooky. But yeah, to talk about the elephant in the room, last weekend was a bitch and a half, man. I'll tell you, it sucked.
A freak basketball incident.
Yeah, so we got 8 people from my work, including me, to finally get together, play basketball, something we've been talking about doing for a long time. We meet up, things are going good, we're shooting, we're getting ready, everyone's there, we shoot for teams. It's going great. I got brand new shoes, whole court to ourselves. It's fantastic. I sink a 3, first shot of the game, make it. I'm like, fuck yeah. Then the ball gets stolen on the next play. Guy goes running down the court. So I go peeling after him, and literally, I don't know if it's the new shoes, brand new floor, lost my footing. I went down hard on my shoulder.
You had a senior moment.
I think so. I don't know. We were playing in a church, and I don't think I belonged. I think God just was like, get the fuck out of here. Shoved me.
You got pushed over by God.
Yeah, I did. But I
Or
landed
he
right on my
tripped you.
shoulder. Yeah.
The old God trip.
And it was one of those things. I stood up and I was like, oh, okay, sub me out for a little bit. I'll play in a second. And I'm
Walk it off.
trying to I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And I've got this huge bump on the top of my shoulder. It'll be there forever. And we're trying to pop it back in because I'm thinking, oh, it's probably a dislocated shoulder. That'll be cool. Snap it back in. No, so I go to the hospital, did the x-ray. It's what they call level 3 AC separation. So my AC joint completely came out of socket. All the tendons tore, or the ligaments tore. And it's got this big old bump on my shoulder.
That explains why it sounded like Rice Krispies.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. And on that same weekend, right when I texted you, I'm using the restroom, and I just hear my wife go, oh, God, oh, God, oh, God. And my son starts screaming. Those are two things you never want to
If
hear.
I only had an able-bodied man
Yeah.
with 2 arms.
She did say that. I'm in the bathroom trying to wipe my ass with my left hand, which is not easy, man. You don't realize how much you use your dominant hand until you can't use it anymore. But I come out, and he's just got all this blood coming out of his mouth. And I'm like, oh, God. But we have this stupid fucking hamper. It's like 3-section hamper with all these plastic pipes. And the kids had decided we're just going to take it apart and play with the pipe. But I guess he had fallen. The pipe went in his mouth and gashed the top of his mouth. and just blood everywhere. So my wife takes him to the hospital, no stitches. Thankfully, he's good. But they were like, it was half an inch from his soft palate, which would have been primary children's. So it was a rough weekend. So I texted Cleet, and I should have worded it better because I'm like, hey, I can't record because I dislocated my shoulder. I separated my shoulder. My son might need stitches. And Cleet's like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Like, unrelated incidents.
But I have no further questions.
But yeah, so that was last weekend. I also watched Skinamarink. Unprovoked. Like I didn't.
I wouldn't tell you what it was about.
Yeah, and I did what you said. I didn't go into it watching the trailer or anything. I went in completely blind. Man, what the fuck?
It's good, man.
It was okay.
It's a good
it
show.
Makes you think.
It's a think burn.
It makes you think.
What do you think it was about?
I mean, it's a couple things. I don't want to spoil anything. I mean, obviously, there's the very intentional, like, child abuse, sort of abandoned childness that you have.
Or a demon just took out the doors and windows.
Yeah.
That's it. All right.
Or it could be. But
check it out.
I almost stopped watching it halfway through. I'm like, the filming style is kind of bugging me. But I finished it. It was all right. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's definitely an artsy film. But yeah, Skinamarink. So there we go.
All right. Well, this is backed by popular demand. We are doing serial killers.
Part 9.
Part 9.
Part 9. Because Part 8 apparently launched us into the subscription zone.
Yeah. Strike while the iron's hot.
So we have South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Tennessee, and Utah today. Going to our state of Utah. Okay, so we're going to start our serial killer spree with South Carolina, talking about a man named Donald Henry Pee-wee Gaskins.
Why was he Pee-wee?
Pee-wee.
It's about his wiener.
No, not about his wiener. Donald Henry Gaskins was born in Florence County, South Carolina, to Eula Parrott, and was the first in a string of Parrott's illegitimate children. She had a string of illegitimate children.
Yeah, it's always difficult when you have illegitimate children.
Yep. So Gaskins was small for his age, which immediately gained him the nickname Pee-wee. So he was just a tiny little kid. And as an adult, he was between roughly 5'4" and 5'5". So it's kind of your stature.
Oh, you fuck off. I'm 2 inches taller than that.
Every inch counts.
Dude, if you're 5'5" and a man, it's tough.
Weighing
Or
approximately 130 pounds. I wouldn't know. I'm sitting at 6'3", baby. Gaskins' early life was full of neglect from his mother, along with abuse from a male relative. They didn't speculate which male relative, but it was happening. His mother apparently took so little interest in him that the first time he learned his given name, which was Donald, was when it was read out in his first court appearance.
What?
Yeah. Can you imagine going your entire life not knowing your name because your mom just never bothers to tell you?
I'm skeptical about that.
Gaskins was often described as a great manipulator and con artist who had street smarts and a very keen sense of humor with a friendly, entertaining personality. Kid was street smart. He wasn't the book smart, you see? At the age of 1, Gaskins reportedly drank a bottle of kerosene, which caused him to have convulsions until the age of 3. That would... Why is that
He was
funny?
young. He was young. Okay, my apologies.
He was 1.
I missed that
You're
part.
just laughing at a kid convulsing for
makes me
3
sad.
straight
Makes me
years of
sad.
his life? You're
Makes
a
me
fucking
sad.
monster. Gaskins engaged in a violent crime spree during his adolescent years with a group of fellow delinquents, which included burglaries, assaults, and a gang rape. Yeah, not good. At age 13, he was convicted of assaulting a young woman by hitting her in the head with an axe when she caught him breaking into her family home.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like an outstanding dude.
No, he's not. I don't know if we'll ever
short
talk...
in stature and short in morals.
Basically. I don't know if we'll ever talk about a good old-fashioned, like, good serial killer. I wonder if there's been ever, like, an accidental serial killer. Like, someone just accidentally kills people.
I think that's against the definition of being a serial killer.
I know, but, like, if you kill someone on
Accidentally.
accident, over and over again.
I just keep throwing these axes
Many
with my
times.
eyes closed, and I keep killing people. It's like,
threw
sir, you were
himself
in
into
the
wood
city.
chipper.
You were in the city.
You're on Main Street. You
This is
can't do
Manhattan,
this.
sir.
I'm blind, though. He was sentenced to 5 years in a reform school, the South Carolina Industrial School for White Boys in Florence, where he was regularly raped by his fellow inmates. After escaping from the reform school, getting hitched, and voluntarily returning to complete his sentence, he was released in 1951 at the age of 18 years old. He briefly worked on a tobacco plantation until he was arrested in 1953 for attacking a teenage girl with a hammer over an alleged insult.
What?
She insulted him, and so he's like, you know what? I have a hammer. Why not? For this, he was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment at the South Carolina Penitentiary. There, he earned the other inmates' respect by killing the most feared man in the prison, Hazel Brazel, in what Gaskins claimed was self-defense. So he shows up and he's like, where's the biggest, baddest bitch in here? I gotta kill him.
It's like a Hollywood movie.
Respect.
Yeah.
It's small man syndrome, man. He's only like 5'5", and he's like, who's the biggest, baddest bitch in here? I gotta take him out.
His name was Tiny.
Tiny Tim. As a result, Gaskins received an extra 3 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. But from that point on, he became the aggressor instead of the victim. He escaped from prison in 1955 by hiding in the back of a garbage truck, fleeing to Florida, the good old garbage truck routine, where he worked with a traveling carnival. He was rearrested, remanded to custody, and paroled in August of 1961. Shortly after his release from prison, Gaskins reverted to committing burglaries and fencing stolen property. 2 years after parole, he was arrested for the rape of a 12-year-old girl, but absconded while awaiting sentence. He was rearrested in Georgia, sentenced to 8 years. Paroled again in November of 1968, and upon his release, Gaskins moved to the town of Sumter, South Carolina, beginning work with a roofing company.
Guess they all don't do background checks.
Nope. Pointless. Now, let's talk about the murders that this man committed. Gaskins said his first non-prison-related murder victim was a blonde female hitchhiker that he tortured and murdered in the September 1969 before ditching her body in a swamp. In his memoirs, he said, all I could think about is how I could do anything that I wanted to her. This hitchhiker was the first of many that he claimed to have picked up and killed while driving around the coastal highways of the American South. Gaskins classified these victims as his coastal kills. People, both men and women, whom he killed purely for pleasure, roughly once every 6 weeks when he went hunting to quell his feelings of bothersomeness. So he would just get behind the wheel when he was ever bothered and just go find someone to freaking murder, man. He said he tortured and mutilated his victims while attempting to keep them alive for as long as possible. He confessed to killing these victims using a variety of methods, including stabbing, suffocation, and mutilation, claiming even that he cannibalized some of them. I don't know why, but like serial killers, like, yeah, sometimes I even ate them.
Yeah, someone, I don't like them. I don't like them one bit.
Gaskins later confessed to killing 80 to 90 victims, although his statements to committing any of these coastal kills have never been corroborated. So he's like, yeah, about 80 to 90, but not really corroborated. In his memoir, however, Gaskins said that he committed coastal kills every 6 weeks, yet he does contradict himself later by stating that he felt the overpowering need to seek out and commit a coastal kill by the 10th day of each calendar month. He also specifically named 3 further individuals in what he called his quote-unquote serious murders. So he's got his coastal kills and his serious murders.
Sometimes I feel like they're just talking big.
Oh, yeah. Especially when they're in jail. Like he's writing his freaking memoir, so of course he's going to be like, in my spring of serious murders where I was really getting to the bottom of things.
I had to categorize them. I did so many.
And then I have these ones where I just like, just wanted to kill because I was bored. So, an African-American couple he named as Eddie and Bertie Brown, aged 24 and 20, that he murdered in 1972, buried behind the Tennant House, which is what he quoted in his book, which is a location that he failed to precisely pinpoint in his autobiography, once stating was a shortcut to go around Columbia. A man named Horace Jones, who was 40, who was murdered in 1974. There's no evidence to support any of the statements made by Gaskins on any murders other than that of Hazel Brazel and the 14 victims that I'll mention here shortly, whose bodies have been found and identified, and whose law enforcement records and Gaskins' sworn testimony substantiate. In November 1970, Gaskins committed his first in a series of confirmed murders, primarily people that he knew and killed for personal reasons. His first confirmed victims were his own niece, Janice Kirby, who was 15, and her friend, Patricia Ann Alsbrook, age 17, both of whom he beat to death. He claimed to be enraged at their drug abuse, while others say that he was attempting to sexually assault them in Sumter. Gaskins claimed also to poison Martha Ann Dix Jr., who was also known as Clyde, in March of 1971 or 72. The reasons range from the rumor of him being the father of her unborn child, or of revenge at her being a drug dealer who supplied his niece and friend. Her bones were found in a ditch, but were lost when they were handed to a university to study. They fucking lost her bones.
What?
How do you do that?
Someone stole the bones. Guaranteed.
They sold them on the black market, they were stolen.
You give someone some bones. You're supposed to give them to someone else, and they go, I lost it.
Yeah,
How do you lose bones?
I don't know. I set them down, and 1 minute they were there, and the next they were gone. We got a bone thief
Whoever
on
lost
campus.
them is into weird shit.
Gaskins was an overt racist, which resulted in him drowning both Doreen Hope Dempsey, who was 22, and her 2-year-old daughter Robin Michelle Dempsey in June of 73, because he was angry that she had become pregnant by a black man. He reportedly walked them both to his backyard pond, where he drowned them both. In June of 74, Gaskins shot and killed his friend and crime buddy, Johnny Sellers, who was 36. Shot him in the back of the head and then stabbed Johnny's ex-girlfriend Jessie Ruth Judy, who was 22, because he thought she would turn them in for their crimes.
You know, on a lighter note, it's always good to have a crime buddy.
Exactly. Always good to have a second wheel. In 1975, Gaskins killed Silas Barnwell Yates, Diane Bellamy Neely, Avery Leroy Howard, Kim Gelkins, Dennis Bellamy, and John Henry Knight. They were killed by stabbings or by being shot. Rudolph Tyner, age 23, was on death row in CCI prison for a March 1978 double murder when he was murdered by Gaskins on September 12, 1982. This one's wild. This earned him the nickname the meanest man in America. The meanest.
Why you mean mugging me?
Tyner was appealing his own death sentence after being convicted of robbing a Morell's Inlet convenience store and killing store owners Bill and Myrtle Moon on March 18th of 78. The Moon's son, Tony Simo, hired Gaskins for $2,000 to kill Rudolph Tyner because, in Simo's view, the appeals process was taking much too long. Simo asked Gaskins what he needed to kill Tyner. Then Gaskins told him to insert some C4 inside the heel of a shoe and mail it to him.
What?
Gaskins obtained plastic explosives with a blasting cap, a long wire, and a radio speaker to create an imitation intercom speaker that Tyner put to his ear to test. Gaskins then detonated the makeshift bomb by plugging the wire into a prison cell power outlet. Just blew him to pieces, man. Gaskins was arrested on November 14th, 1975, when his associate, Walter Neely, confessed to police that he had knowledge of Gaskins killing Dennis Bellamy and Johnny Knight. Neely told police that Gaskins confided in him that he'd killed several people listed as missing during the previous 5 years and indicated to him where they were buried. On December 4th of 75, Neely led police to land near Gaskins' home in Prospect, where police discovered the bodies of 8 of his victims. Gaskins was tried on one charge of murder on May 24th, 1976, found guilty on May 28th, and sentenced to death, which was later changed to life in prison when the South Carolina General Assembly's 1974 ruling on capital punishment was changed to conform to the U.S. Supreme Court guidelines for the death penalty in other states. Fucking dodged it, man.
I still think we should put serial killers in like a stadium where they fight each other to the death. Yeah.
I'm not going to say I wouldn't watch it. While on death row, Gaskins said that he committed between 100 and 110 murders, including that of Margaret Peg Coutinho, the 13-year-old daughter of then South Carolina State Senator James Coutinho Jr. of Sumter. These murders have been widely disputed, and there's been no evidence to support Gaskins' statements. He was executed on September 6, 1991 at 1:10 a.m. in the electric chair, hours after he tried to kill himself by slitting his wrists. His last words were, "I'll let my lawyers talk for me. I'm ready to go." So there you go.
All right.
That was that, motherfucker.
Wow.
I'm assuming we're going on to
South Dakota, man. Get quick. We're going to be talking about Jake Bird. So,
Bird's the word.
The strange story of Jake Bird is as good as it gets if you're looking for a chilling story of South Dakota's Tacoma's crime history.
That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yet, it's a story rarely known outside circles of true crime geeks. Bird's story is noted in anthologies of serial killers, often as one that seems too weird to be true. But it is true. And it happened here. This is the story of Jake Bird's Hex. Bird was born in Louisiana in 1901. He had a troubled life that forced him to leave home at the age of 19 to seek his fortune by riding the rails of America. Bird fit the bill as a stereotypical hobo. Nothing beats the hobo life, stabbing people with your hobo knife.
Jesus Christ.
Sneaking into train cars, only to hop off once the train reached town. He would then trade a day's work for a night's sleep and a warm meal wherever he stopped, only to hop back on another train and start the process again. Bird was otherwise unremarkable wherever he went, but that would change when he reached the end of the line in Tacoma.
Can you imagine being dead and like you're in the afterlife and you hear someone say, "Yeah, Cleet was otherwise unremarkable"?
I mean,
you'd be like, Jesus
comparatively,
Christ, dude.
I mean, I think a lot of people would get that designation.
Yeah, but you don't want to hear that. He was otherwise unremarkable and dumb.
Britain, you are the master of your domain. You can make your life more
That was
remarkable.
deep.
The city of Destiny, after all, was the terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad, a fact that coined the term. Fast forward to October 30th, 1947, Bird was 45. He was looking for work and came across the home of Bertha Klutt and her daughter, Beverly June. The house still stands at 1007 South 21st Street. Bird entered their home and hacked them to death with an axe. They screamed during the attack, alarming the neighbors, who proceeded to call the police. 2 officers arrived at the scene, only to find Bird covered in blood, still holding a knife as he ran from the scene. They cornered him. He attacked. 1 officer was slashed in the hand, while the other was stabbed in the shoulder. Despite their injuries, the officers managed to tackle Bird and handcuff him. He was taken to the hospital for his injuries and then delivered in shackles to the old City Hall jail cells. Bird almost convinced the officers that he was innocent, but the fact that he still had brain matter spattered on his shirt finally convinced the officers that they had their man. It's like, I don't know, man. Why you got brain on your shirt? It's like, oh.
Who doesn't?
Bird eventually confessed to the killings, stated it was a burglary gone wrong. Bird's trial came a month later. It lasted 3 days. He was convicted of murder of the first degree and was sentenced to death by hanging. A double killing in a city was news, but actually would have been forgotten had Bird's story ended there. It hadn't. It had only just started.
Dun, dun, dun.
As Bird was being sentenced, Bird declared, "I'm putting a hex of Jake Bird on all of you who have had anything to do with my being punished.
Good old curse.
My words, you will die before I do."
I just got the chills.
Taken as just another idle threat by a murderer. You're like, come on. The hex didn't get much notice. That is, until people started dying. The first to go was the judge who sentenced Bird to death. He died of a heart attack not long after the conviction. Next was Bird's defense lawyer, who also died of a heart attack. Then the police officer who recorded Bird's confession, he died of a heart attack too. Then another police officer who wrote an official report on Bird passed of a heart attack.
Who's handing out all these heart attacks?
It's Bird, man. It's his ex.
You get a heart attack, and you get a heart
He's
attack.
the Oprah of heart attacks.
And you get a heart attack. He's the Oprah of heart attacks.
Yeah. Then one of Bird's prison guards died of a heart attack. And finally, the court's clerk died of pneumonia.
Oh, I was going to say a heart attack.
Nope, you got it wrong.
That's the outlier.
While still alive on Walla Walla death row, Bird continued to confess to crimes during his years on the rails. He tallied 44 murders to his butcher's bill, providing enough details about 11 of those murders that the cases were officially closed. Bird's first kills were reportedly those of 2 women in Evanston, Illinois, in 1942. Other victims were confirmed in Louisville, Kentucky, Omaha, Nebraska, Kansas City, Kansas, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Cleveland, Ohio, Orlando, Florida, and Portage, Wisconsin. Police in Houston, Texas, suspected he murdered a woman there as well. Bird's story would end on July 15, 1949, almost 2 years later after his last crime. He was hanged on the gallows. He is buried at the prison cemetery at Walla Walla Corrections Center. His grave is marked with his prison number, 21520.
God damn.
That's it, man. He did a hex. A lot of people died from heart attacks.
Makes you think.
Coincidence?
I think not. All right. Well, let's go to Tennessee for the Harp brothers. This one was weird because there's not a whole lot of like records as where these guys came from. This happened a long time ago. So as little information as there was, it went into a lot of like the wartime and stuff. So you're going to get like the Cliff version of it. I had to cut a lot of this shit out. But these guys were fucking monsters. So Tennessee, the Harp brothers.
Tennessee whiskey.
I don't know how to pronounce this name. It's Micajah.
It's Micajah.
Micajah. I don't think it's Micajah.
Micajah.
It's not Micajah.
Or Big Harp. Everyone knows him.
It's Micajah. So it's Micajah Big Harp, born Joshua Harper before 1768, August 24th. Okay, so before 1768 and August 24th of 1799. And Wiley Little Harp, born William Harper before 1770 to February 8th of 1804. They were American murderers, highwaymen, and river pirates who operated in Tennessee. Fucking river pirates. We got pirates in this shit.
It's going to be a good story. Buckle up.
Kentucky, Illinois, and Mississippi. So they operated in Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, and Mississippi in the late 18th century. They are often considered the earliest documented serial killers in United States history. I think we've heard that a few times in this roundabout.
But I was the first.
I was the first. No, I was the first.
I was fucked up, but I was the best.
I think the first serial killers were like caveman times, man. I'm sure there were some cavemans walking around whacking people with clubs.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. Fucking
dragging women
T-Rex.
back to their caves. Saw it in a cartoon.
Which one? The Flintstones?
You've never seen that in a cartoon?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, fuck off.
You get so aggressive. You need more whiskey?
Yeah.
There you go.
I wasn't a mad fuck off. It was just
That was a fucking mad fuck off. What other fuck off is there?
playful.
Fuck off.
Fuck off.
Loyal to the British crown during the American Revolution, the Harps became outlaws after the war, began robbing, killing settlers in the remote frontier west of the Appalachian Mountains.
You don't mess with people in the Appalachian Mountains.
No.
I guess it was west of theirs.
Yeah. They're believed to have killed 39 people, possibly as many as 50. As the Harps' crimes gained notoriety, vigilante groups would form to avenge their victims, and they were eventually tracked down and executed around the turn of the century. Their savagery has since entered American folklore, appearing to have been motivated more by bloodlust than financial gain. There are few certain records of their lives from this time period. They're believed to have been born in what is now Orange County, North Carolina, to Scottish parents. Micajah was probably born in or before 1768 as Joshua Harper, and Wiley in or before 1770 as William Harper. Though many historical accounts identify them as brothers, it's possible they were probably first cousins named Joshua and William Harper, who emigrated from Scotland in 1759 or 60. So according to this theory, their fathers were brothers, John and William Harper, who settled in Orange County, North Carolina between 1761 and 1763. All right, so again, for the sake of time and due to the massive amounts of speculative history involved with the brothers, we're going to discuss their serial murders and other atrocities. Sometime during 1797, the Harps began a vicious crime spree through Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois. The Harps later confessed to the killings of a confirmed 39 people, but the estimated combined total, including known victims, may number more than 50. In 1797, while the Harps were living near Knoxville, Tennessee, they were driven from town after being charged with stealing hogs and horses. They're also accused of murdering a man named Johnson, whose body was found in a river, covered in urine and ripped open, with the chest cavity filled and weighted down with stones.
To be fair, Johnson was a dick.
He was. He was the town dick. And that just seems like a hate killing. Covered in piss, like his chest ripped open and filled with stones.
Or an alien impregnated him and they were shooting the alien.
They were eggs, not stones.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What was a face hugger? Well, yeah, no eggs. And the alien comes out.
Yeah, exactly. So this became a signature corpse disposal method of the Harps' serial killings. They reportedly butchered anyone at the slightest provocation, even murdering babies. So, like, if you piss these people off at all, they would just kill you.
I'm going with the facehugger theory. I think they were killing an alien invasion.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'll subscribe to that theory. I mean, again, aliens did a lot of shit. They still do. From Knoxville, the Harps fled north into Kentucky. They entered the state on the Wilderness Road near the Cumberland Gap. So they're believed to have murdered a peddler named Peyton, stealing his horse and some of his goods. In December, they murdered 2 travelers from Maryland. So they're just murdering everybody they come across. Next, a man named John Langford, who was traveling from Virginia to Kentucky, turned up dead, and a local innkeeper pointed the authorities to the Harps. The criminal pair was pursued, captured, and jailed in the state prison in Danville, Kentucky. But, they managed to escape because they're not going to be there for long. When a posse was sent after them, the young son of a man who assisted the authorities was found dead and mutilated by the Harps in retaliation.
Damn.
They're just killing everybody, man. On April 22nd, 1799, Kentucky Governor James Garrard placed a $300 reward on each of the Harps' heads. Fleeing northward, the Harps killed 2 men named Edmonton and Stump. When they were near the mouth of the Saline River in southern Illinois, they came across 3 men encamped there. And you guessed it, they killed them too. The pair then made their way to Cave-In Rock, which is a natural cave on the bluffs above the Illinois bank of the Ohio River, and a stronghold of the river pirate and criminal gang leader Samuel Mason. So they found fucking pirates. So a posse had been aggressively pursuing them, but stopped just short of the cave on the opposite shore in Kentucky. So with their wives and their children in tow, the Harps holed up with Samuel Mason gang, who preyed on slow-moving flatboats making their way along the Ohio River. So if they weren't serial killers, this would be a cool story. Like, they just running away from all these people, and they found pirates, and they teamed up with pirates.
Sure.
While the Mason gang could be ruthless, even they were appalled at the actions of the Harps. They're like, man, we're crazy, but you're next level. After the murderous pair began to make a habit of taking travelers to the top of the bluff, stripping them naked and pushing them off, Samuel Mason forced the Harp brothers to leave. So the pirate guy's like, you know what? We're not good people, but you're like making people naked, pushing them off a cliff. You gotta go. We want nothing to do with you.
Killing a bunch of naked people.
So yeah, they were kicked off of a pirate ship. Like, how bad do you have to be booted from pirates?
They were not a good buccaneer.
The Harps then returned to eastern Tennessee, where they continued their vicious murder spree. They killed a farmer named Bradbury, a man named Hardin, and a boy named Coffee in July 1798. You can't make these names up. Soon, more bodies were discovered, including those of William Ballard, who had been disemboweled and thrown into the Holston River, James Brassel, who had his throat viciously slashed and was discovered on Brassel's Knob, and John Tully, John Graves, and his teenage son were found dead with their heads axed in south-central Kentucky. In Logan County, the Harps killed a little girl, a young slave, and an entire family they found asleep in their camp.
Murderous bastards.
It's not funny, but like, they're just literally going through, and anyone they cross, they're just killing. If you're sleeping,
Except
you're
for the
dead.
pirates.
Yeah, the pirates. But like,
moral of the story, be a pirate.
I guess, if you want to live. In August 1799, a few miles northeast of Russellville, Kentucky, Big Harp bashed his infant daughter's head against a tree because her constant crying annoyed him. This is the only crime for which he would later confess genuine remorse. Like, he bashed his own daughter's head against a tree, dude. That same month, a man named Trowbridge was found disemboweled in Highland Creek. When the Harps were given shelter at the Stegall home in Webster County, the pair killed an overnight guest named Major William Love, as well as Mrs. Moses Stegall's 4-month-old baby boy, whose throat was slit when he cried. When Mrs. Stegall screamed at the sight of her infant being killed, well, she was also murdered. The Harp killings continued in July 1799 as the two fled west to avoid a new pursuing posse, organized by John Leeper, which included the avenging husband and father, Moses Stegall. While the pair was preparing to kill another settler named George Smith, the posse finally tracked them down on August 24th, 1799. The posse called for the Harps to surrender, and they attempted to flee. Micah Harp was shot in the leg and back by Leeper, who soon caught up with him and pulled him from his horse, subduing the outlaw with a tomahawk. As he lay dying, Micah Harp confessed to 20 murders. While Harp was still conscious, Moses Stegall slowly cut off the outlaw's head. So as he's confessing, he's like, "Yeah, we're just gonna decapitate, cut his head off." While he's confessing. Later, the head was spiked on a pole. Some accounts would claim a tree at a crossroads near the Moses Stegall cabin that to this day is still known as Harp's Head or Harp's Head Road.
What if you went for a walk from your cabin, just saw like a head on a tree?
I mean, this was the 1700s, man.
Probably just turn around.
Be like, yeah, that's not the way we want to go.
We're going home.
I do recognize that guy, though. He stole $20 from me.
That guy's a douche.
He's a dickhead.
What a dickhead.
What a dickhead.
Didn't he kill Johnson? Well, that guy was a dick.
He did kill the town dick, but he himself is a dick. He's a dickhead. Now he's just a head. Wiley Harp successfully escaped the confrontation and rejoined the Mason gang pirates at Cave in Rock. So the one brother's like, yeah, I'm done. He finds the pirates again. 4 years later, Wiley Harp might have been captured along with the rest of the gang, but went unrecognized because he was using the alias of John Sutton, or John Sutton. Both Harp and Samuel Mason, who's the gang leader, escaped, but Mason was shot. Afterwards, Little Harp and another gang member, Peter Alston, who went by the name of James May, was the son of the counterfeiter Philip Alston. He tried to claim that the bounty on Samuel Mason, although it is unclear whether Mason died from the wounds sustained during the escape or whether Harp had killed him. Regardless, as they presented Mason's head, a Kentuckian recognized Harp and Alston as outlaws themselves, and the two men were arrested. So they tried to turn him in like, well, actually, you're wanted too. So there you go.
Get him.
The two soon escaped, but were quickly recaptured, tried, and sentenced to be hanged. In January 1804, Willie Harp and Peter Alston were executed by hanging. Their heads were cut off and placed high on stakes along the Natchez Trace as a warning to other outlaws. So there you go. Just a couple of brothers or cousins who literally killed anyone and everyone that they could.
All right. Well,
potentially the world's oldest serial killer.
what a horrible story.
I can't wait for Texas.
Indigestion. All right.
Upset stomach, diarrhea.
I kind of sing the diarrhea a little too happy. Diarrhea.
It's Pepto-Bismol. Why wouldn't you?
All right, let's jump to Texas. We'll be talking about Dean Coral, or as known as the Candyman.
Oh, shit.
Candyman.
Candyman. This story
I got stung by a bee.
Have a lot of bees in it.
Hook.
Have you seen the newest one, the remake they did?
Nope.
It's not bad.
I need to watch it.
It's not bad.
Dean Coral was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to Mary Robinson and Arnold Edwin Coral. Coral moved to Pasadena, Texas, with his mother and younger brother when he was 11, following the breakdown of his parents' marriage. He was regarded as a good student in school and well-behaved, although a heart condition kept him out of physical education.
That sucks.
In the 1950s, Coral's mother started a small candy company along with her second husband, operating from the garage of their home, and almost immediately, Coral was working day and night while still attending school. At age 19, the family moved to the Houston Heights and opened a new shop following the breakdown of his mother's second marriage in 1963. She appointed him vice president of the company, and he moved into an apartment above the shop.
Wow, 19 years old and already vice president of a company. Man, he's moving up.
A candy company.
In the Houston Heights.
That's like an 8-year-old's dream.
Kid's moving up.
The candy company, by now, had a small number of staff, and Coral often spent a lot of his free time in the company of young boys.
Okay. All right, we're going to go here now, huh?
He often gave free candy to local children.
I think we could just end this story right here.
He often gave free candy to local children, and for this reason, he was given the nickname the Candyman by the media when his crimes were eventually uncovered.
I bet he was.
Coral was drafted into the military in 1964, where it was believed he first realized he was a homosexual. He was given a military discharge after serving 10 months so that he could help his mother run her candy business. He eventually took over the business and invited local children to the store for free candy. A number of local people commented that it was not normal that Coral always seemed to hang out around with youngsters, in particular teenage boys. However, no one made the connection with the rash of missing youths. Following the failure of her third marriage in 1968, Coral's mother moved to Colorado. Although they often talked on the telephone, she was never to see her son again. The candy company began to fail, and, like his father, Dean took a job as an electrician at the Houston Lighting and Power Company. He worked there until the day he was killed by Wayne Henley. So let's talk about the murders. In early 1970, when he was 30 and training to be an electrician, Coral began to abduct and murder young men and boys whom he raped and killed and then buried either in Coral's boat shed or in rural areas around the city.
He's a piece of shit.
At some point in the 1970s, Coral met a 15-year-old boy named David Brooks, who was a promising A student, but whose grades had recently begun to slip. Coral paid Brooks for sexual favors, and Brooks later claimed that he once found Coral raping 2 boys he had tied to the bed. Coral offered him a Corvette in return for his silence. Brooks accepted and never saw the 2 boys again.
A Corvette, huh?
Shortly afterwards, Coral made the acquaintance of Elmer Wayne Henley, a local 14-year-old who came from a broken home. He had a drinking problem and soon dropped out of school to work to support his divorced mother and 3 younger brothers. It was thought that Coral originally planned on adding Henley to his growing list of victims, but decided against it when he realized Henley knew most of the other youths in the area.
Yeah, it's not a smart move.
Henley soon began to help Coral lure victims and even began to take an active part in the murders.
Son of a bitch.
So the victims. All the victims were young males between 13 and 20 years old. Coral's first known victim was an 18-year-old college freshman, Jeffrey Conan, who vanished on September 25th, 1970, while hitchhiking with other students from University of Texas to his parents' home in Houston. Conan was dropped off alone at the corner of Westheimer Road and South Voss Road near Uptown District of West Houston. At the time, Coral was living in an apartment on Yorktown Street near the intersection with Westheimer Road. Conan likely accepted an offer by Coral to take him to his parents' house in the Braeswood Place West University Place area.
Area?
Like, oh my God.
Areola.
It's just a hard sentence. Unlike Conan, the majority of victims were in their mid-teens and most had been abducted from Houston Heights, which was then a low-income neighborhood northwest of downtown Houston. One of the victims, 15-year-old Homer Garcia, met Henley at his driving school education class and was invited to Coral's for a party. Many were listed by police as runaways despite the anxious protests of parents who insisted that their boys would not run away from home.
I know my boy, he would never run away.
Dude, that's sad, though. It's the police failing their local population.
Police fail a lot.
Yeah, it's true. Quite often, the victims, alone or in pairs, were invited to Coral's parties. Several were friends with either Henley or Brooks or both. Mally Winkle and Bully
Oh my God,
Balsh.
dude.
Mally Winkle and Billy Balsh had actually worked for Coral's candy business in the late 1960s. The known victims, all of whom had either been shot, strangled, or both, that had been identified by police. September 25th, 1970, Jeffrey Conan, 18, picked up by Coral while hitchhiking to Houston. He was buried at High Island Beach. December 15th, 1970, Danny Yates, 15, was lured with his friends James Glass by David Brooks to Coral's Columbia Street apartment while attending a religious rally. All these people were killed. December 15th, 1970.
Wait, you had to clarify?
Yeah,
All these people were killed, by the way.
James Glass, 14, was an acquaintance of Coral. He and his friend were strangled before being buried in Coral's boat shed. January 30th, 1971, Donald Waldrop, 17, vanished on his way to visiting a bowling alley. According to Brooks, Donald's father, who was a builder, was working on the apartment next to Coral's at the time Donald was murdered. January 30th, 1971, Jerry Waldrop, 13, was strangled along with his brother and buried in Coral's boat shed. Coral placed his ID card alongside his body.
And his boat shed has got to be fucking...
A lot of bones in there.
Man.
March 9th, 1971, Randall Lee Harvey, 15, disappeared on his way home from his job at a Fina gas station. He was shot in the head and buried in Coral's boat shed. Remains identified on October 17th, 2008.
God.
May 29th, 1971, David Hilgest, 13, vanished on his way to a local swimming pool. He was one of Henley's earliest childhood friends. May 29th, 1971, Mally Winkle, 16, former employee of Coral's candy store and boyfriend of Randall Lee Harvey's sister, was last seen alongside his friend David Hilgeist climbing into a white van. August 17th, 1971, Reuben Watson, 17, vanished on his way to the local cinema. Reuben was the final identified victim to vanish before Henley began to participate in the abductions and murders. March 27th, 1972, Frank Aguirre, 18, was the boyfriend of Rhonda Williams, whose presence in Coral's house sparked the fatal confrontation between Henley and Coral. He was buried at High School Island Beach. This guy's killing a massive amount of kids. May 21st, 1972, Johnny Delhomme, 16, disappeared on his way to the local store. He was shot in the head, then strangled by Henley. May 21st, 1972, Billy Balsh, 17, vanished with his friend Johnny Delhomme, had also worked as a candy seller for Coral in the late 60s. He was buried at High Island Beach.
Jesus Christ, man. These just keep on going.
I know. October 2nd.
I know.
October 2nd, 1972, Wally J., 14, vanished on his way to spend the night with his friend. October 2nd, 1972, Richard Hembry, 13, was last seen with his friend in a white van parked outside the grocery store. He was buried in Coral's boat shed. December 22nd, 1972, Mark Scott, 18, was killed at Coral's Schuler Street address. He was a friend of both Henry and Brooks. June 4th, 1973, Billy Ray Lawrence, 15, was kept alive by Coral for 4 days before he was killed and buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. He was friends of Henley. June 15th, 1973, Ray Blackburn, 20, from Louisiana. He was married and had a child. July 7th, 1973, Homer Garcia, 15, met Henley at driving school. He was shot and buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. July 19th, 1973, Tony Bolsh, 15, Coral had killed his older brother Billy the previous year. He was buried in Coral's boat shed. July 25th, 1973, Marty Jones, 18, was last seen along his friends, Charles Cobble, in the company of Henley. July 25th, 1973, Charles Carey Cobble, 17, a school friend of Wayne Henley, his body shot twice in the head and found in the boat shed. August 3rd, 1973, James Dramala, 13, was Coral's last victim and was lured to Coral's Pasadena apartment on the pretext of collecting empty Coke bottles to resell. So this guy went on a giant massacre, and people are scared. Houston, obviously. Anyways,
kids start dying.
42 boys had vanished within the Houston area since 1970. The police were heavily criticized for curtailing the search for further victims once mass killer Juan Corona's macabre record for most victims had been surpassed. After finding the 26th and 27th bodies tied together at High Island Beach, the search was called off. A curious feature about this final discovery was the presence of 2 extra bones, an arm bone and a pelvis in the grave, indicating at least one further victim awaiting discovery. The search for further bodies at the beach was abandoned on August 13th, 1973, despite Wayne Henley's insistence that there were further 2 bodies buried at the beach in 1972. Fellow workers of the Coral Candy Company recalled Dean doing a lot of digging in the years leading up to 1968.
Man, you're doing a lot of digging.
When Dean's mother's third marriage was deteriorating and the firm was failing, Coral stated he was burying spoiled candy to avoid contamination by insects.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right?
No further questioning.
Gotta bury this candy.
Man, the freaking Snickers went rotten.
Dean subsequently cemented over the floor.
You corrected yourself.
He was also observed to dig in waste ground, later converted into a car park.
That made my whole night. Subsequently.
It could be said both ways.
I know.
Former employees also recalled that Coral had rolls of clear plastic of precisely the same type used to bury his victims. The suspicion is that Coral may have begun killing much earlier than 1970. A 5.5-month gap between the killings of Mark Scott and Billy Ray Lawrence is extremely unusual for a serial killer. Police in nearby Galveston County had received reports of 3 men observing digging on the beach in March 1973. However, police were again unwilling to extend the search. Like, we found enough.
We're done.
So, anyways, we're going to go to the discovery. At approximately 3 a.m. on August 1973, Henley, then age 17, went to Coral's house accompanied by a boy named Tim Curley, who was supposed to be the next victim. Also with them was Rhonda Williams, 15, who was Henley's girlfriend. Brooks was not present at the time.
I would not want to be the person that found his boathouse.
There's probably so many bones in there.
Ugh.
How many femurs can you find and then be like, you know what? I think something's up.
Maybe a little bit.
Coral was furious that Henley had brought a girl along, but eventually he calmed down and the 4 of them started sniffing glue and drinking.
Oh, it's a Friday night.
Yeah, good. Bring out the glue.
Did you bring the Elmers?
Oh, Lord, Elmer's. Put a flour and water.
Did you bring the Elmers?
Soon, Henley, Curley, and Williams all passed out and awoke to find themselves tied up and Coral waving a .22 caliber pistol around, angrily threatening to kill them all.
That's terrifying.
Henley calmed Coral, and the older man eventually put down the gun and released Henley. Coral then insisted that while he would rape and kill Curley, Henley would do likewise to Rhonda Williams. Henley refused, and soon a row broke out between him and Coral. It ended with Henley grabbing the pistol and shot Coral 6 times, killing him instantly.
Damn.
After releasing the other 2 youngsters, Henley called the police while they all waited outside the house. Henley told Curley that, "I could have gotten $200 for you."
Oh, Jesus.
This apparently being the fee he was paid by Coral to recruit victims. In custody, Henley explained that he and Brooks had helped procure boys for Coral, who had raped and murdered them. Police were a little skeptical at first, as they assumed they were just dealing with one homicide of Coral, as a result of a drug-fueled row that had turned deadly. Henley was quite insistent, however, and the police soon accepted that there was something to his claims, especially when they found a torture board at Coral's house, consisting of a large wooden board with handcuffs in each corner.
Yeah, people don't usually have those.
There were also a number of dildos and length of rope, as well as an ominous-looking wooden crate with what appeared to be air holes. Human hairs were found inside the crate.
Oh.
Later that day, accompanied by his father, Brooks presented himself at the police station, and he was promptly questioned concerning the allegations Henley was busy making. The police went to the boat shed located on northwest Houston, where Coral had rented for several years, where Henley said those bodies of most of the victims could be found.
Yeah, they're not going to like what they see.
They began digging through the soft earth and soon uncovered the body of a teenage boy. They continued excavating, and the remains of more dead boys were uncovered, several wrapped in plastic. Some had been shot, others strangled, the ligature still wrapped tightly around their necks.
Hey.
Some had been castrated, their pubic hairs were plucked out, one at a time.
Damn.
Objects were inserted into their rectums, and glass rods were shoved into their urethras and smashed.
Okay, wow.
Genitals were removed, and all were anally penetrated.
A good trigger warning would have been really good for the start of that, bud.
My bad.
Thanks for that.
Eventually, 17 corpses were uncovered at the shed. Following Henley's directions, police excavated a number of other locations, including Crystal Beach, Texas. The remains of 10 more bodies were uncovered, making the total of 27 victims. Henley insisted that there were 3 more bodies yet to be found, but these were never located. At the time, it was the worst case of serial murder in the terms of number of victims in the U.S., exceeding the murder of 25 attributed to Juan Corona from California. The Houston mass murders, as they became known, hit the headlines all over the world, and even the Pope commented on the atrocious nature of the crimes and offered sympathy to the relatives of those who had died.
The Pope?
Yeah, dude, this is fucked, man. Families of victims, including 2 who had lost 2 sons each to Coral, were highly critical of the Houston Police Department, well deserved, which had been so quick to listing the missing boys as runaways and not worthy of investigation.
Yeah, that was some good detective work there.
We have a rampage of young
All these
boys
kids
running
are just
away.
Running away. That's all it could be.
Anyway, sorry about that. That was Texas.
Yeah. It doesn't get much better with Utah. So I will say, though, trigger warning with Utah. So you can be prepared.
Yeah, we need to put a trigger warning there.
Yeah, trigger warning for the whole thing, obviously. Late to the game, we're going to be talking about a man named Arthur Gary Bishop.
Was he a bishop?
So Utah has had more than its fair share of serial killers that have passed through, committing murders and other heinous acts on their way. So it's kind of a challenge to narrow down. I mean, freaking Ted Bundy was here for a while. I landed on a monster named Arthur Gary Bishop, who had his roots in none other than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Go figure, in Utah, right?
His last name was Bishop, and he was a bishop.
Weird.
He'd be Bishop.
So let's get into the history of this vile piece of shit, shall we? Arthur Gary Bishop was born in Hinckley, Utah. He was the eldest of 6 brothers. Bishop was raised as a devout Latter-day Saint and was an Eagle Scout and an honor student.
Oh, wow, I bet he's looking up.
Yeah. When he was 19, Bishop served as a missionary in the Philippines. So far, just your typical Mormon kid. Bishop was arrested for embezzlement in February of 1978 and given a 5-year suspended sentence. But he skipped his parole and fled to Salt Lake City, living under the alias of Roger Downs.
We've all embezzled at one point in our lives.
Sure, why not?
Give
Just
the guy
a
a
minor
break.
embezzlement here and there. What's the fucking harm? In 1979, he was excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Man, he's had it all, and then he lost it all. While in Salt Lake City, he joined the Big Brothers program, where he was a big brother to a 10-year-old boy for nearly a year. Bishop was forced out of the program, however, before his first murder, after directors discovered that he was molesting other children.
Oh, wow.
All right, so again, we've already mentioned it, but a big trigger warning on this one. Bishop killed his first victim, 4-year-old Alonzo Daniels, on October 14th of 1979.
That's going to be one of these.
He lured the boy from the courtyard of his apartment complex to his own apartment with the promise of free candy. I wonder if he knew your Candyman guy. After attempting to sexually assault Daniels, Bishop took him to the bathroom, hit him on the head with a hammer, and then drowned him in the bathtub. He fondled the boy's dead body and mutilated his genitals. He put Daniels into a box, carried him out, walking past the boy's mother, who was frantically calling her son's name. Like, I don't like that. He then buried the body in Cedar Valley. Bishop relived the experience in the following months by buying and killing puppies, stating, "It was so stimulating. A puppy whines just like Alonzo did. I'd get frustrated at the whining. I would hit them with hammers or drown them and strangle them." Just a horrible, shitty fucking person. Bishop molested a young boy named John in exchange for money and expensive toys. On November the 8th of 1980, John introduced Bishop to an 11-year-old named Kim Peterson at a roller skating rink. Bishop had told John that he wanted photographs of Peterson. John agreed to contact Peterson, promising to buy a pair of roller skates that they were trying to sell. When Bishop and John had called Peterson, Bishop took the phone and asked Peterson to meet him and John at a pool parlor. Bishop then asked Peterson if he wanted to go out to Cedar Valley and hunt rabbits. Peterson said yes, and after convincing him to take photos in the car, they got out to start walking. Bishop, who was walking behind Peterson, had shot Peterson in the back with a .38 caliber revolver. Peterson began crying. Bishop shot him twice more in the head. Bishop then molested Peterson's corpse, mutilated him in a fit of anger, and then buried him close to the body of Alonzo Daniels. Law enforcement authorities routinely questioned Bishop, but Bishop was not considered a suspect in Peterson's disappearance. Witnesses described the man Peterson had talked with at the roller skating rink as white, aged 25 to 35, around 200 pounds, and with dark hair. On October 20th, 1981, Bishop lured 4-year-old Danny Davis from a supermarket to his home half a block away. After playing with toys at Bishop's house, Davis became bored and started to cry. Concerned about the noise, Bishop put his hand over the boy's nose and mouth, suffocating him. Some other boys were coming over to Bishop's house, so he put the body in a couple of garbage bags, placing them in the corner of the kitchen. The next morning, after breakfast, Bishop took the body to Cedar Valley. Davis is the only child that Bishop did not molest. Several shoppers recalled a smiling man standing near the child, but could only give vague descriptions of his appearance. Police launched one of the biggest searches in Salt Lake County history. 4 teams of searchers scoured neighborhoods, divers dredged ponds and lakes. Shoppers at the supermarket where Davis vanished agreed to undergo hypnosis to dislodge greater details of the abductor. Like, they're putting people under hypnosis to find this person.
Did tarot card readings too.
Flyers were printed offering a $20,000 reward, and the FBI were contacted, but were unable to find any trace of the boy. After murdering Danny Davis, Bishop vowed to never do it again. However,
he's a changed man.
Yeah. However, almost 2 years later, on June 22nd of 1983, Bishop abducted 6-year-old Troy Ward while he was waiting on the corner near his home.
I fucking hate this guy.
For his mother to return from the store with ice cream and cake. It was his 6th birthday.
I want him. I hate this guy.
Yeah. Bishop, now using the alias of Roger Downs, took Ward to his bungalow and asked if he wanted to play a game. Ward said yes, and Bishop handcuffed him, tied him between 2 pillars in his basement, pulled his pants down. This is rough. So again, apologies, this is rough shit. When Ward began to cry, Bishop hit him with a rubber mallet until he was silent. Bishop put Ward's body in a trash bag, tossing it into a stream in Big Cottonwood Canyon, thinking it would be easier than burying another body in the desert. 1 month later, on July 14th of 1983, 13-year-old Graham Cunningham was prepping for a trip to California with a friend and his father. John and Arthur, the serial killer, after Bishop picked up Cunningham, he tricked him into going back to his home to pick up some marijuana, which they were going to sell for cash. Bishop asked if Cunningham would pose for some photos, which he agreed, in exchange for the skateboard he wanted. Bishop was afraid that Cunningham would tell, so he hit him in the head twice with a hammer. He took Cunningham to the bathroom, filled the tub, and drowned him. He disposed of the body the same way he did Ward's. 2 days later, John and Bishop went to California. Local police looked into their past reports and found that Bishop lived in the vicinity of 4 of the abductions and knew the 5th child's parents. Police brought him in for questioning on the pretext of his assisting officers with their inquiries into Graham Cunningham's disappearance. So, he lives in the same vicinity as all of them and, was assisting the officers with the last person that he killed. Feeling the pressure of the interrogation, Bishop told detectives that he wanted to show them something at his house. So he's like, yeah, I got to show you something. When they arrived, they found more than 300 photos of young boys, some placed in a white wedding album, and 125 pictures of naked boys cut out from magazines. Police were able to identify and interview 21 boys that he had photographed and molested, but Bishop said that their estimate was low and they needed to double or triple that amount. Back at the station, police managed to obtain his real name and eventually got him to confess to all 5 murders. The confession lasted less than an hour, after which Bishop led the police to Cedar Valley. Bishop was brought to trial on February 27th of 1984. During his trial, Bishop claimed that an addiction to child pornography molded his violent sexual fantasies and eventually drove him to act them out. The trial lasted 3 weeks. On March 19th of 84, Bishop was found guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder, 5 counts of aggravated kidnapping, and 1 count of sexually abusing a minor, and sentenced to death. Upon receiving his sentence, Bishop apologized to his victims' families and requested to be executed by lethal injection. After his conviction, he wrote a letter in which he explained the motivation for his crimes. This is what it said. I am a homosexual pedophile convicted of murder, and pornography was a determining factor in my downfall. Somehow I became sexually attracted to young boys, and I would fantasize about them naked. Certain bookstores offered sex education, photographic, or art books, which occasionally contained pictures of nude boys. I purchased such books and used them to enhance my masturbatory fantasies. Finding and procuring sexually arousing materials became an obsession. For me, seeing pornography was lighting a fuse on a stick of dynamite. I became stimulated and had to gratify my urges or explode. All boys became mere sexual objects. My conscience was desensitized and my sexual appetite entirely controlled my actions. Bishop was executed by lethal injection at Utah State Prison in Point to the Mountain on June 10th, 1988. He declined his last meal. Before his execution, he again expressed remorse for his crimes, saying, I want to offer again my most profound and heartfelt apologies to my victims' families. I am truly sorry. I've tried my best to empathize with their grief and devastation. I hope they come to know of my concerns and prayers for them.
Don't buy it.
Nope. Yeah, so that one was rough, but that's Utah. So, yeah, there's the penultimate episode before the grand finale.
That got dark, man. That got dark.
Yeah, that got really dark. So, apologies about Texas and Utah. Apparently the worst there. But that wraps us up for the evening. So again, a huge thank you to all of you for getting us over the 500 subscription mark. Again, we are definitely planning our trip to the Clown Motel in the next few short weeks, so stay on the lookout for that. And as we continue to grow and develop, as we reach 1,000 subscribers, let us know where you want us to go, and we'll definitely book our trip there. Huge shout out to our 9 paid supporters of the show: Modelo Time, Cleat Meat, Claytor, Lord of Soup, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Devin, Laura, Conklin family, and Lou. Again, the consistent support is absolutely appreciative, helps us grow and expand, get a camera, and all that good stuff. So thank you very, very much.
I feel like someone wants to eat me. It scares me. Anyways, if you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.